All right, welcome back, guys, to round two of OPO2's online regional here with PPG. My name is Yadam, and I'm hosted here alongside Free. Are you
You-
excited for this match?
Yeah, so we found this Z player, which is pretty cool, and he's going against a very interesting matchup actually in another OPO2 leader Whitebeard. So
Yeah, we definitely tried to find Zephyr versus Kinemon, and we'll continue to be on the search in the future, but for right now, I think this will have to suffice. I don't have you guys waiting for too long. So we have our match of the for round two, Zephyr versus Whitebeard. So let's see how that goes. That goes into. We'll get right into the match. So Fernando, how do you feel about this matchup?
okay, so definitely, I want to see Whitebeard succeed, but I think that Zephyr can defend itself effectively against Whitebeard in the early game, and then it'll just come down to how many characters the Whitebeard player can keep on the field, moving into their Moby Dick turns, basically. So that's what I feel the matchup is going to come down to, but we'll see.
So very interestingly enough, the Whitebeard player, I'm assuming he lost the die roll, going first, Zephyr going second and passing on two, and then countering out of the first initial swing. Let's see what the Whitebeard player does here. What
So
do they
definitely,
usually do on three Dawn? Oh, they just pass.
and there you go, nothing, nothing at all.
Oh, all
But
right, interesting.
interesting that he didn't go for a 7, 8, 9K swing if he was just gonna pass with 3 Dons. So I want to know if he has any reactive cards. And from the side of the Z player, I actually very much enjoyed that 2K guard coming down simply because keeping your life total as high as possible, moving into the Moby Dick turns is how you win. So
No, most certainly. So here we go, and we play a Jack. Speaking about the ramp that Zephyr has access to, and we'll go 7 at Whitebeard's 6, which will, prompt a 2K if they want, or they can just take this life. If it is the Moby Dick version, you kind of don't mind defending, and we'll just ship a Radical Beam. That's a very preemptive Radical Beam. Uh,
it's
I'll,
very possible that the Whitebeard player, I mean, their decks consist of a lot of event cards, so maybe he wants to get a few of those out of his hand. And from the Z player's perspective, he had an option of doing a more passive turn and just playing the Kuzan and not attacking, but he chose to get aggressive in the early game, and I'm kind of down for that because Whitebeard pressuring its life is very valuable. So
no, most certainly. You want to definitely at least try to whittle their hand size just a little bit. The main takeaway from playing against Whitebeard, if you're playing against the Moby Dick version, is you want to try to stall them when they're at 2 life. So the turn that they go to 2 life, don't hit them. Let them go ahead and basically lose a Moby Dick turn. And then on the following, once that turn ends, they'll be at 1 and pressure them very heavily when they're at 1, and then pressure them again at 0. So you want to kind of like mitigate your turns or plan them out. But by summoning this Monkey D. Luffy 4 drop, I'm sorry to believe this might not be a Moby Dick version at all.
and on top of that, it feels we didn't have the inclination as to what deck he was on simply because he didn't start with Nami. He didn't have an early game sort of play. So, but yeah, it looks like it's the Straw Hat version just based on the vanillas that he's playing. And actually, I think the vanilla version might be a little bit better against Z simply because you can start attacking earlier. So.
I really do like this 6K attack coming from the Zephyr player. This is going to go ahead and we see a Honeydew. Now, Honeydew, again, could be put in either version of the deck. He's just a very well statted card. And we'll go ahead and see a Borzolino keeping 2 Dawn up for a possible Impact Wave or any sort of purple card, maybe Bagua, Hell's Judgment. We have access to a lot of nice 2-drop event cards. So we'll go back to the Whitebeard side. I think he's going to be now currently at 7 Dawn. Not,
Mhm.
right? So there's a lot of different things that he has access
Do
to at this
we
point.
put the Whitebeard player on Newgates on the 9 drop slot, or do you believe not?
I'm not personally a fan of the Newgate character card in the Whitebeard leader deck,
Because
but
it may
I
be
have seen some
incredibly
people try
instrumental
it
in
out.
this matchup if he does actually have it.
Oh
So
no,
we'll
if
see.
specifically versus Zephyr, if he has any amount of 9 drop, it's going to be very, very strong. You're going to be able to just slam that card. And it's not easy to remove 9 drops in this deck. Usually anything between 8 and lower, surprisingly, is easier to remove. But a 9 drop is just right outside of Kuzan leader range. So we're going
Zephyr
to
taking the damage here might indicate to me that he has a couple of options in his hand that he doesn't want to get rid of. And taking the second life to the 6K is very, very surprising.
Now we haven't invested any Dawn at this point in time, so we can just go ahead and write out. This looks like a 5 drop Luffy. Okay, a Honeydew also. King Dew. Sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Honeydew, but King
You're
Dew
a little
coming down.
hungry over there, I know for sure. But hungry for victory is what we are here. And Z feels to me like they had a sort of the right idea in the early game guarding the first attack that was done to him, but then taking two sixes without down investment and letting the Whitebeard player play a vanilla plus hold up Don for some counter events, even though he indicated that he has a lot of counter events in hand. So definitely the Z player kind of going back and forth in game plans here. And I just want to see what the context of his hand is.
I mean, he did drop two 2Ks from his hand. He also jacked the Kuzan. So we were down a couple cards at this point in time. We had removed three effectively and deployed two. So our hand size was probably not great. He didn't want to go ahead and double drop or something like that, or potentially put his Borzolino in danger's way. That's why he attacked with the leader first.
It might
So
be it might have been a choice to go down to two and then expecting the Luffy version of the Whitebeard deck to play a rusher and then be able to use Thunder Bagua to 10 drop on this turn. Maybe that was the line of play that he was going for and it didn't work out for him.
yeah, there is something to be said if he Bogwood. I mean, if he had played the 5-drop Monkey D. Luffy starter deck Rusher and swung at leader, he could have Bogwood, and then you have the Kuzan access, which would just remove the Monkey D. Luffy 5-drop. So it would have been really crazy if that's what he was plotting. But now with so many cards in hand, it's going to start getting a little bit dicey, right? The Whitebeard player is still not at 0, but he has been pitching a lot of cards to defend himself early. I think he went ahead and defended the Luffy that turn, which I thought it was very good from the Z player to go 6 at Luffy, 8 at Luffy. Very good numbers to go at it. And we're going to go ahead and see.
And
Oh, that's a 9-drop.
this is 9 drop, no? Yeah.
That has to be 9-drop, right? Oh my
And
goodness.
there you go.
And
And now
that
this is going to
is
be a savage advantage of a turn because I feel like that 9 drop
holy.
makes it so that the life is essentially unpressurable going back, and he still has two, and then he's going to get a few turns of swinging vanillas. So the Z player is going to have to start pitching a lot of cards in this 9 drop, like we said before. It's just actually so crazy in this matchup.
Yeah. Wow. I was not expecting that card to come down, but man, it really took me by surprise. I don't like the fact that he swung with the leader first, as the leader is the strongest card on the board. He could have definitely maybe, I think, could have swung with the with the do, gone 7 at leader, which would maybe, he can argue that it's 2 cards from hand or a Borzolino proc or a damage, and then go 8 at leader. So
This
definitely
is
going to be a
where,
very tough turn. So,
yeah,
but here
and
we
he
have
did
the
have the
Boggle.
Bagua in hand, so maybe a little bit of trying to mind game the Whitebeard playing into using a rusher to attack and it not working out. And now we see that taking those few points of damage in the early game is going to come back to
And bite
punish
him.
him a little bit. So
Very no, he's gonna get very punished. But I think a 7 is a Borzolino 2K, which doesn't feel bad. You also have access to 2 more Dawn, and that's where we're gonna see a Borzolino 2K.
and the red player can also ascertain that depending on how the Z player defends the guard here, if he
Whoa, whoa,
had
whoa,
a
whoa, whoa.
lot
Whoa, you
more.
don't take life. You don't take life. You don't take life.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Do you want to go ahead
Yeah,
and
I'll go ahead. I think the judge is there. Judge is gonna go ahead and we have a
figure?
judge for this one. They're gonna go ahead and figure a way to fix that.
But like we were saying before, essentially, depending on how many events the Z player has in his hand, he might have considered using one there just for Dawn efficiency, but went ahead and did the play that you mentioned, block with Borsellino and play in 2K. And now here's the Kuzan getting rid of one of the vanillas. The
Yeah, that's
King
gonna
is
have
gonna
to go
go.
ahead and deal with the king do, but in doing so, I mean, this is going to go ahead and do like a pseudo board clear, right? Because you can then swing with the Zephyr, trigger Zephyr's effect. I mean, you're not going to do anything on the swing because of the Whitebeard character card, but you will effectively remove the Monkey D. Luffy, which is kind of nice.
With the lack of blockers in this format in general, I want to believe that as long as the Whitebeard player can cement two characters per turn from here on out, and then just attack with the 9 drop. Hopefully, there won't be two. Oh, and two Kuzans can come down because the Dawn -4 happened, like you mentioned. So this is the pivotal turn for the Whitebeard player, I would say.
Yeah, if he weren't able to, I mean, if he was able to hold the Dawn minus effect and he double Kuzan the Whitebeard, then we're in a really solid spot. But maybe with 4 cards in hand and knowing what your hand is, if there's cards that don't have counter, let's say one of them is Kuzan, you'd be in a very sticky position if they had access to all 10 Dawn, a Whitebeard, a Monkey D. Luffy, and the character card. So maybe it was okay to Dawn minus there just to put yourself, like, give yourself a little bit more time.
And interestingly enough, playing the King Do earlier in the game might have been the right choice because now if he has any sort of rush characters, he still has them in his hand for this specific turn where he can get a little bit of damage in, hopefully. And There we go with
No,
the
it's
7
just
attack, and I think that he should have been doing this the entire game. I feel like just 7 base
I
at
think
any
I
leader.
like I like 8 a lot actually, funnily
Oh, yeah?
enough, because the 8 is just out of Borzolino's range. So if you 8 is probably burn a life,
That
in
is
my
true. Now
opinion.
that he has no Don open and Borsalino, if it blocks, it probably just dies.
Yeah, so like I said, two to burn a life, then Whitebeard, no Dawn investment, just 10,
That's probably
and
burn
then
another life,
that's
unless he
burn
wants to
another
sacrifice
life.
Bors.
Absolutely right. And then there is a universe where like Monkey D. Luffy from the starter deck comes in, becomes unblockable, and goes for game.
And we already
Okay,
put him on that
and
because he has that
yeah,
$4
and
Luffy. There
speaking
he
of,
is. There you go.
and speaking of, so funnily enough, I would have liked to see the Whitebeard attack first, which is again burn a life or
Yeah,
lose a Borzolino. Uh, but this is probably going to be 9 at lead, and then go with Whitebeard. The question is, if you do this play, you're all inning, and you better have some amount of counters in hand because you're going to go down to 0 life.
I think that he's okay. So if he was going for this sort of final turn situation, he would have attacked with
The
the
Whitebeard,
Newgate character first, just to see if the opponent made a mistake and took the life instead, just to get an unblockable attack in. Maybe he's
certainly.
reconsidering his options now, understanding that he's going to actually go down to 0 life this turn.
Well, I mean, he has to swing with this Whitebeard. What else are we doing with it at this point in time? Have to proc some sort of interaction from our opponent, remove burn cards, or lose a Borzolino. I'm
Does he
definitely
have enough cards to get out of what is that, a 20 on the
18.
no 18 on the way back?
He's gonna have to get out of an 18, and I mean we could also use Zephyr's, so we can go 18 and 6 because we can just Zephyr effect to go up to 6K and then try to pressure the leader, and that's kind of the dangerous spot. If he was gonna go for this play, he definitely shouldn't have shown his opponent his hand, right? He should have kept him like a magician. You wanted to distract them a little bit with your board, and then go in with like the surprise factor, which was the Luffy. And now the camera do be doing a little shaking.
I do feel like maybe the judge went in and told them to reassess something, but I I feel like he did. Let's just say the Z player's hand was a little bit weaker combo wise, which it did seem like that at the time, and he just goes Newgate attack, don't sacrifice Borzolino, take the final life, and then go in for an unblockable attack. And we weren't sure that he was playing the unblockable Luffy in his deck. Maybe he could have snuck in a win if he didn't show his hand.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely think he could have snuck in a win. 9K I think he's at 6 cards in hand. There is a possibility of it just because, and he's tapped out, right? There's a lot of cards that Zephyr plays that are non-countered cards when you're tapped out. Specifically your Thunderbogwas, Hell's Judgment. Let's say if he had an amount of those cards, he definitely couldn't have access to them. He's also pitched at least 4 2Ks this game. So C I think plays what, like 12. So the possibility of having 2 more 2Ks plus another card out of 6 cards in hand seemed very unlikely to me. But
Or at least reasonable, right? It would have been a reasonable attempt for game. So
and speaking of the 8
now, if he comes out of this, I'll be perplexed, but we'll
well,
see.
let's also remember the fact that he should theoretically, spiritually, mentally, and physically be at 1 life here.
Yeah, that is true.
Just by the way, I have not been counting. I think that is not enough. Oh, fist bump through the screen, and that is not enough. That's not enough counter to get out of it because, yeah, it's just not the way it goes. But it didn't look like he had any events either. So his turn was supposed to possibly go in that direction no matter what.
Yeah, just the sequencing wise. So it ended up being just because of the context of his hand, that was the right play to make. It just feels as though if he swings in a different order, he might have snuck a win there, just depending on the context of the Z player's hand. But either way, decently played game from both sides, and it gives you a nice look at just how powerful the 9-drop is in the Newgate deck.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and read the 9-drop character card one more time because again, I'm not completely, the set is still pretty new even to me. So let me just read his effect out loud. On play, up to one of your leader gains 2K until the end of your next turn. Then you cannot add cards from your life area to your hand by effects during this turn. The only issue, obviously, there was a judge in the room that went ahead and saw that he played the character card and took a life that turn. The issue is in card games, information that isn't readily available to you. Once it becomes available to you, it's very hard to remove that from like the knowledge factor.
The equation.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the equation. So it's not like as easy as saying, oh, just put the card back. Since the card went off the screen, we have no
Mhm.
access to know where that card is, what that card was, and then it becomes a little he said. It's not like a he said she said situation, but it becomes a tricky situation to fix the game state,
It's
and
just simply at the end of the day irreparable, and maybe that's
it's
what the judge
irreparable.
went with in that scenario, and that's why the lack of one life there definitely made an impact. But if we look back at the way that the Z player could have attacked, there might have not been enough combo for splitting the attacks anyway. So definitely made a huge difference to take a life there, but it might have ended up in the same result. But I just want to look at the matchup overall and what the Z player was doing the entire game, where he essentially chose, instead of going for slow, you know, playing one dude a turn plays and not swinging at the new gate. He didn't do that. He, instead of playing Kuzan specifically on 4 dawn, when not didn't play Kuzan, played Jack and then discarded a card, ramped, and then used that dawn to attack the leader and force cards out of his hand. I think the Z player was going with the right game plan in that matchup, because attacking early has so much value against the Whitebeard.